On the evening of August 16, 1987, Northwest Airlines Flight 255 pushed back from its gate at Detroit Metropolitan Airport. 149 passengers and 6 crew members were aboard a McDonnell Douglas MD-82, bound for Phoenix. The aircraft was on its third flight leg of the day. The pilots were experienced. Their records showed nothing unusual. At 8:46 p.m., the aircraft began its takeoff roll on runway 3 center. 14 seconds later, it was wreckage burning across a highway and a rental car lot. 156 people would be dead by morning, but 1 child would survive. Captain John R. Moss was 57 years old and had logged nearly 21,000 hours of flying time. He had worked for Northwest Airlines for close to 32 years and was known by other pilots as competent and capable, a pilot who operated strictly by the book. His first officer, David J. Dodds, was 35 and had flown more than 8,000 hours over his career. Both men's training records were clean. Their backgrounds showed nothing abnormal. By every metric that aviation uses to judge crew fitness, these were 2 of the safest pilots in the cockpit that night. The day had been routine. The aircraft had originated in Minneapolis that morning and had already made 2 flight segments, Minneapolis to Saginaw and Saginaw back to Detroit. As the crew prepared for the third leg to Phoenix, the weight and balance sheet arrived in the cockpit around 8:29 p.m. The aircraft's takeoff weight was just over 144,000 pounds. The flight data indicated they needed 11 degrees of flap extension, and the slats moved to mid-position. These were the settings required for safe takeoff at that weight. But there was a problem building in the darkness of the cockpit, and neither pilot would catch it. There were 3 checklists that pilots ran before takeoff: the before start checklist, the before taxi checklist, and the taxi checklist. The taxi checklist was the only one that included an item to extend the flaps and slats for departure. The cockpit voice recorder would later provide clear evidence that this checklist was never run. The aircraft pushed back from the gate with its flaps fully retracted, 0 degrees of extension. Nobody called it out. Nobody caught it. The pilots were a little off the pace that evening. The first officer had missed a frequency change. The captain had missed his taxiway. But these were small, correctable errors. The checklist that could have caught the missing flaps was never opened. As Flight 255 taxied to the runway, another failure was already in place. The aircraft's takeoff warning system, the cause unit, was supposed to sound an oral alarm if the pilot attempted to take off without the flaps and slats properly extended. It was a safety net built into the machine itself. But the cause unit was receiving no electrical power. The input from the 28-volt direct current bus had been cut somewhere between the electrical panel and the warning system itself. The interruption occurred at a circuit breaker labeled P40. Later, investigators would recover the cause unit from the wreckage and test it. The unit worked perfectly. It had never been the problem. The power loss was the problem. But why the power was gone, nobody would ever know for certain. At 8:46 p.m., Flight 255 began its takeoff roll. The aircraft accelerated down runway 3 center. The engines were generating power. The airspeed climbed. At 170 knots, the nose lifted and the aircraft became airborne. But with 0 flaps extended, the wing was generating far less lift than it should. The stall warning system activated and began to sound. That alarm the pilots could hear. But the takeoff warning alarm, the one that would have told them something was critically wrong before they ever rotated, remained silent. The electrical power that was supposed to feed it had been cut off somewhere in the darkness of the electrical system. The aircraft climbed to just under 50 feet above the ground when it ran out of energy. Without sufficient flap extension, the wing could not sustain flight. The MD-82 stalled. It rolled hard to the left, a 40-degree bank, and its left wing struck a light pole 2,760 feet beyond the end of the runway. 18 feet of the wing was severed. Jet fuel ignited. The aircraft struck other structures, more light poles, the roof of a rental car facility, and finally the ground. It tumbled across I-94 and the ground adjacent to it. The entire sequence, from the moment the aircraft lifted off the runway to the moment it came to rest as wreckage, lasted 14 seconds. 154 people died in the cockpit and the cabin, 2 more died on the ground, but 1 person survived. Cecilia Sisson was 4 years old. She had been traveling with her family from Phoenix to Santa Ana. She was the sole survivor of 155 occupants. She sustained severe burns, broken bones, and a skull fracture. How she survived and why no one else did remains one of the most difficult questions accident investigators ever have to answer. The National Transportation Safety Board issued its investigation report on May 10, 1988. The probable cause was clear. The flight crew had failed to run the taxi checklist. That single omission meant the flaps were never extended. The takeoff warning system had lost electrical power, and although the stall warning activated, it came too late to prevent the crash. The NTSB issued 12 findings, 7 recommendations to the FAA, and 1 recommendation to all commercial airlines. The investigation determined that the reason the electrical power was lost could not be proven. The circuit breaker was too damaged. But the checklist failure was the pilot error that initiated the entire cascade. After the crash, Northwest Airlines retired flight number 255. The airline later merged with Delta Airlines, which also does not use that flight number. A black granite memorial was built in 1994 at Middle Belt Road and I-94 to commemorate the victims. The memory of one overlooked checklist on one routine evening has stayed part of aviation safety training ever since. Every crew that runs the taxi checklist today does so in part because of what happened to Flight 255. One 4-year-old lived to tell the story that 155 others never would.